Hello again. So right now, a lot of people are thinking really short term. They're thinking, do I have enough stuff to remain in isolation for a couple of weeks? Am I going to run out of toilet paper because everybody else is stockpiling it and there's none at the store? But there's not that many people who are thinking, what kind of country am I going to live in a year from now? And even 10 years from now? What kind of country am I going to live in 10 years from now? Um, I'd like to encourage you not to keep your focus pinned on what's being plastered everywhere. Just take in a broader view of what's going on. What you actually want to be keeping an eye on right now is political and economic reforms that are going to be riding in on the wake of this issue. It's a minor, this is a minor threat compared to the major and permanent economic and social and political reforms that are going to follow this. I'm going to explain what I'm saying, so don't just automatically get upset and turn to it's like a zeitgeist of the age, like a spirit of the age, where everybody's got this hive mind about this, where as soon as you say anything in a disagreement or say, hey, let's actually reconsider what's actually going on here, that there could be a bigger picture to what's happening. And as soon as somebody even makes that suggestion, people jump on them like, are you insane? What are you talking about? It's like yes, a hive mind. But I'm plugged into another hive, and it's saying something different. So anyways, I'm going to just explain some of the rationale and also where I think this is potentially long-term going. Why... Yeah, I'll just try and explain this. So why is it that all over the world the borders are shut down? Why is military being put into different positions? Or potentially military is being mobilized. There are initiatives to bolster up healthcare, this kind of stuff. There's severe push for socialism in the States, and the States is super opposed to socialism and such. And like a greater advancement of the socialist type of thing. What is causing all of this that we're seeing going on in the world right now? It is 64,000 deaths worldwide. Now that might sound like a lot. It's like, oh my, 64,000 people have died. But it's of the coronavirus, and that's sometimes also with complications, as in the person was already on their deathbed from cancer, but also was diagnosed with the COVID virus, and so they died of the cancer but had COVID. So we don't actually know necessarily that all those deaths were actually from the virus. They were just had the virus when they died. So anyways, that's one thing on the side. What is the coronavirus? It is a type of virus that can infect your nose, sinuses, or upper throat. They can spread much like cold viruses. Almost everyone gets a coronavirus infection at least once in their life, most likely as a young child. Most coronaviruses are not dangerous, but some are. Those that cause Middle East respiratory syndrome or severe acute respiratory syndrome can be deadly. So there's a couple strains of this virus that can be deadly, and this is one of them. One of the strains of the coronavirus that can kill you. So most of them, they're not deadly. Now that means that this virus has been, a part of our flu season for a very long time now, which means we'll get this, we'll get over it, we'll get it, we'll get over it, we'll get it, we'll get over it. Sometimes people will die from it. And so this has been going on a long time, right? Now there's a new strain, and it's another deadly one, and deadly ones surface, right? And then we become immune to them, and then another deadly one surfaces, and then we become immune to it, and that's like how viruses work. This would just be another flu season, right? Let's take a look. To put it into perspective, we've had 64,000 deaths of people who had the coronavirus when they died, whether it was necessarily the coronavirus that they died of or not. And each year, worldwide, 646,000 people die of the flu. So if this were not specifically being singled out as one strain of the type of virus that we get in flu season, that 64,000 worldwide that we've seen so far would be among the 646,000 that usually happen, right? There's various strains of the flu that are out right now that every year people die of. Some of them are more deadly than others. If you focus in on the deadliest one of that year, then you're going to see more deaths from it. So very often, like, it's not that uncommon for deadly, deadly viruses to, like I was saying, 646,000 people die in this flu season of various different strains, right, of the type of thing that they'd call a flu, even if they don't necessarily get it diagnosed. So if this similar type of thing happens year after year, what's unique about this year is that the media has taken one strain of the flu, and it's the strain that happens to be the deadliest one of this year. There's different years where there's different strains, and some of them are more deadly than others in any flu season. So they've taken one strain of the flu and given us a play-by-play of its spread and the death count. So the only thing novel about this year, really, when you look into the broad perspective of things, of flus and viruses, right, is that we have an irregular social response to a regular flu season. Like I just talked to you about the statistics, right? We're at 64,000 deaths during the flu season of a strain of one of the viruses that we would typically just lump in with the flu, right? The coronavirus. It's like it gives you flu-like, cold-like symptoms. And if you've had it in the past, you would have classified it, oh, I've got a cold. Something like that, right? So if we hadn't known what it was, we wouldn't be pinpointing it and focusing all of our attention on it, right? But one strain has been chosen this year for some reason, election year or something. Must be significant, I don't know. Anyways, I'm going to keep on going. Alright, and besides this, it's like, not only is there this skepticism about why is this strain of virus being focused on at this time, but there's also like articles coming out saying things like there's countries that have lied, like China lied about coronavirus putting the world in jeopardy. It's like they're saying that China minimized the death count of it. And it's like, if we're not even getting accurate reports, how do we know that there aren't people exaggerating it too? Like, how do you know that the statistics we're even getting are accurate? So, like, some people are saying this virus was developed in a lab in China, right? There's a virus that was developed in a lab in China, and it's some sort of like chemical warfare to take over, to destroy a large portion of the population, or whatever, that kind of stuff. But it's like, I would actually be more liable to say that this is just another strain of viruses that surface around flu season, and it's a typical flu season being leveraged for a political agenda. Like, like I just explained. Like, think it through. Consider what I'm saying anyways. Because there's serious consequences, eh? It's like a fake virus scare. If this is like, okay, the virus is real. It's real that this is a strain of the coronavirus, which is a virus that you've probably had in your life. There's a strain of the coronavirus that's it's deadly. As I was explaining, that every flu season there are strains of the viruses that are more deadly than others. So picking the virus of that flu season that is the most deadly and then focusing all the attention on it blows it out of proportion and makes it seem like an epidemic. So what I'm saying is it's not a fake virus. It's not actually not deadly, it's just way, 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 way out of proportion. Like, we could just be, if the media was not honed in on these 64,000 deaths around the world, we'd just be going about life and it would be a typical flu season where people would be dying of what they were like, oh, I've got the flu and I died of it, and I'm another one of those statistics of people who have died of the flu. It would be within the 600,000 worldwide range of people who die. And it won't just be of the coronavirus, it'll be influenza and other such. So this exaggerated scare is going to cause a real economic collapse. And then in such a circumstance, we have a socialist opportunity, eh? So the government is happy to step in and save the day. They rescue you, and then they own you. Like, as I'm thinking this through, it's like I can remember an example of something that happened in ancient Egypt. There was a 7-year economic boom, followed by a 7-year famine. At the end of the famine, Egypt was the world power. They became a superpower in that area because of what they did during the economic boom and the economic famine. So during the fruitful years, the governing body of Egypt stockpiled food, and then by the end of the 7-year famine, the people come to the government and they're saying, our money is gone, and all of our livestock and cattle are yours. We have nothing left to give but our bodies and our land. Why should we die before your eyes? Buy us and our land in exchange for food. We offer our land and ourselves as slaves for Pharaoh. Just give us grain so that we may live and not die. So the Pharaoh bought all of the land of Egypt. All the Egyptians sold him their fields because the famine was so severe. And soon all the land belonged to Pharaoh. As for the people, he made them all his slaves from one end of Egypt to the other. So this was a way that an economic crisis was used as leverage for political advantage to take total control, really. And I'm just going to slide this in there. It's like, once you give something up, it doesn't just get given back. You have to pay the price for it. There's a lot of people who are sitting back right now and being like, oh, we'll coast through this. We'll just put our right to assemble in church gatherings on the side, and they'll come back. We'll get it back. And it's like, oh, do you know, like, if you're a Christian, do you know that we live in a world with an evil agenda against us? Like an actual living being who is evil, who is against us, who is not just going to give us back our rights to assemble. We're going to fight for it. And maybe you'll walk into church one day and be like, oh yeah, I knew it would come back. But that's because somebody stood up and fought for it. That's because there's people going to jail right now for holding church services. There's people receiving death threats and needing security because they're holding church services. And this is over 64,000 deaths of a strain of something that we would consider a flu during typical flu season. And you can't think that there might be something more going on here. It's like, from what I can see, from what I can tell, by paying attention to cycles and patterns within history, it looks like we're in the beginning of something similar to Joseph's 7-year famine, right? At the end of which Egypt rose up to become the dominant world power of that age. I think that a similar pattern may be beginning to play out right now. Based on what happened in ancient Egypt, the end game would be to establish a governing body that would rise to a level of prominence and power greater than any other in any age in history, because of how interconnected we are now. You wouldn't just rule over, well, then what I mean is the known world is much bigger. So one problem with a potential global power rising up and taking control would be that there are governments currently in power who would not be on board with this idea, which means another thing that we could, one thing that we could be watching out for right now in the coming months is a targeted effort to remove any person or party that has a voice in conflict with the lockdown, and a voice that doesn't agree with the solutions to the economic crisis that the lockdown is causing. So the virus scare is accomplishing a number of things simultaneously that would be setting the stage for a global population lockdown and control. Like, this isn't a temporary thing. Don't think this is temporary or we're going back to normal after this, unless there's fighting against it. The spiritual warfare kind of fighting, like not physical, not like actually fighting. Just because I don't know who's going to necessarily be listening to this, and I don't mean actually fighting. For one thing, the virus scare creates the economic crisis needed to make people completely dependent on those who still hold resources. For another, it can be used to remove any political person or governing body that resists the measures being taken. I don't think it's a coincidence that this is happening in the year of the US election. I think it's a politically driven agenda that won't be able to ride on a fake virus scare forever. I'm not saying it's a fake virus. I'm saying that the scare of it is majorly blown out of proportion, as I was explaining previously. Following the virus scare, the shift of governments that are in the way, the economic climate will establish this politically driven agenda into its position of power. So it's like the virus scare will abate. Am I right? Yes. But the economic crisis will not. It will be lasting. So the economic climate is what will establish the politically driven agenda into its position of power. Like, if this does play out, it's likely that it would never reach public knowledge that the virus scare had been a typical flu season situation that was blown out of proportion by strategic media emphasis and omission, combined with a bit of misinformation and celebrity and political endorsement, because by the time the dust settles, it won't matter what caused the economic crash, just that we're trying to survive under some kind of oppressive regime. The most interesting thing, as I think of it, about what happened in Egypt when the 7-year famine was over and Pharaoh owned the entire land of Egypt. He rose to the highest level of power within the known world. So the most interesting thing about that is what God was doing, The name Joseph means God will increase. So God was using Joseph to make Egypt great, but that also can also mean God is the one who will become great, right? So God will increase can mean God makes you increase, but God will increase also means God will elevate his own name. He's going to increase. So Egypt became the world power during the famine, but after God made Egypt great, he used Egypt to make himself great by humbling Egypt with the 10 plagues that we're still talking about today. Like, movies are made out of it, and we still discuss it. Just everybody knows this story. So God's made himself great by these plagues that he sent on Egypt after he made Egypt great. So it does also bring to mind the end times concept where the beast takes control of the world, and there's a system, a governmental system that is like ancient Egypt in its level of power, prominence, and then it gets wiped out, and then God raises his name up to the highest, and Jesus comes in. So yeah, I hope that you'll at the very least think about something that I've said. Let me know your thoughts on this. If I've made you think a new thought. Even one new thought would be cool. Yeah, it's a very exciting time for Christians to be alive. And as long as you keep your ear to the ground, as in face on the ground in prayer, ear to the ground. Like, ask God what he has for you right now. What does God want you to be doing right now? Because this is going to be the first Easter where churches all over North America will be empty. The first Easter since North America was settled, where there will be empty churches all over North America. This is probably going to be like the worst celebration of resurrection ever. Anyways, something for you to think about. I've sure been thinking about it nonstop. Alright, talk to you later.